Hey there, welcome to our first video. This is a video on process, a process that non-technical founders can use to kickstart development on their products in just 3 weeks. So whether you are just starting out, maybe you've got an idea, you're not sure how to get started, maybe you've already started development, but you're not happy with the process that you're making, or maybe you have an existing product and you want to build that V2, go to the next level. This is a process that you can use to kind of take that vision out of your head and get it ready for actual development very quickly in 3 weeks. We're going to talk about things that you can do to avoid losing money. We have some examples here of people who lost $100,000 or more to shady partners. So to folks that just want to kind of take your money, maybe they get some work done, but they're not going to be able to get you to the finish line. And now you're out 100 grand and you don't have a product. So we're going to show some examples there. We're going to talk about how you can avoid that with this process as well. Before we jump in to the process itself, I want to give some examples of results that you can expect with this. These are clients of ours, but all of these people receive these results because A, they're fantastic founders themselves, and B, because of the process. So I'd love to take credit for everything that our clients have done. That's not the case. What's really going on here is that this process works and these guys are smart. You're smart too. So I'm sure you can do the same thing. Loper, I want to talk about Eric Mena and Sam Bernstein. They came out of session 1 of this process and said, we've got more done in the last 4 hours than Sam and I have achieved in the past couple of weeks. Sam said, I wish we did something like this a couple of months ago. On our website, I will link to these actual videos where you can see them talking about this process a little bit more in depth. We're not going to watch these now. I don't think the sound works. Another client of ours, same process, Blueverse, theblueverse.com, Mason, Alec, Taylor, and Drew. Taylor came out and immediately the first response was, I'm on fire, which was awesome. That's one of my favorite things someone said coming out of this. Mason said, we've had ideas flowing for so many months. Now that we finally get to put them on paper, it feels good. And again, this video will be on our site if you want to watch it. And then last but not least, another great example, Hayway.io, Shirley Vega, Tyler Rash, another group of phenomenal founders. Shirley said, we managed to put everything down on paper and organize it from A to Z. I love that this process is not just about designing a product, but about seeing the full vision and strategy of the company, not just thinking of your MVP. So again, kind of give you an idea of the scope of this process. It's not just about building a spec, getting that spec to developers to build. It's really about understanding what you're building, why you're building it. So who is this for? This is for founders of technical startups that don't have the skills to build it themselves. Maybe you have no experience in tech. This is your first startup, your first app, your first website. Maybe you work tech adjacent, or you've got some design skills or something. Whatever the case is, if you need partners, especially technical partners, this process is for you. It's for founders in a number of different phases of this process. And we'll talk about how the 3-week version of this that I'm going to describe, if you're later on this list, you get to kind of fast forward through that process. You get to skip parts of it. But it's for founders starting with an idea, but they're not sure how to get started on the building process. It's for founders with a well-defined, validated offer, looking to get their products designed and then developed. These are folks who have done some pre-sales. Maybe they have a landing page, but people who have really put the legwork in to be sure about what they're building. It's for founders with existing designs. Designs they had another firm do. Maybe they got a freelancer to do. Maybe you did them yourself because you're a designer yourself, and you're just looking for help actually building them, so the development piece. It's also for founders with existing development work on the product, looking for help bringing it to the finish line. We're going to see some examples of some clients of ours who got about 80% of the way with another team, ran into issues, and used this process with us to kind of reset and figure out how to make it from that 80 to that 100% mark. And then finally, it's for founders with existing products looking for help taking it to the next level, looking for help with that V2. So you've already got something, you're happy with it, but you want to add on, you want to figure out where to go next, how to really bring this thing to the next level. Generally speaking, this is a presentation for founders, which is a very important word. It's not for entrepreneurs, people that come up with startup ideas and just like to think about them and talk about them and are in this more for the title and the cachet that it gives you than the actual process. It's for business-minded founders. So folks who understand the business they want to build, the product they want to build, they just need help building it. It's It's for founders who are ready for the messy world of startups. This is not like this really cookie cutter, clean process, right? We're going to get in here. We're going to be critical about our ideas, and we're going to explore all the things that we can do in this process. So if you're ready to kind of jump in and get your hands dirty, this is for you. It's for folks that just need help navigating the world of tech. Tech is confusing. There's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of jargon. There's like all these languages and platforms and stuff that you have to know if you want to get involved in it. This is to kind of help you navigate that world as a foreigner in it. It's for founders that want to own their product. They just need execution partners. So people who still want to define and set the vision of what they're building, they just need someone to build it. It's for people who aren't sure how to discern between good and bad technical partners. If you have never worked with an engineer before, how can you tell that a freelancer, a studio, a hire, a technical co-founder, how can you tell that they actually know that they can do the things they say they can do? It's very tough. So we're going to talk about that a bit, how you can kind of vet them, get some experience working with them before you give them 20%, 50% of your company, before you spend $100,000, that kind of thing. And that gets into our last point. It's for founders who don't want to get burned by shady partners in this process. I already said this, but it's not for entrepreneurs. So if all you care about is the landing page that you built and having business cards with a cool logo on them, this process is a waste of time. It's hard. The thing that you can't see in those stills, but if you watch those videos, especially the ones that we record right after sessions, people are exhausted. We have a clip from another client who literally just I asked her how she was feeling and she just stared into the camera because this is a hard hands-on process. It's not for people who don't want to sell. So one of the things Paul Graham has said with Y Combinator, early stage founders have two jobs: writing code, talking to customers. You're not going to be writing code. You're a non-technical founder. You need to be comfortable talking to customers, and that means you need to be comfortable selling. It's not for people who want things 100% absolutely perfect before launch. This is about figuring out what we can deliver, how soon we can deliver it, and launching. It's a process for identifying the critical pieces so that we can survive long enough to hit perfection later. And it's not for people who can't handle criticism. This is a process of breaking down your preconceived vision, the vision that you have in your head. This process is all about extracting it, analyzing it, deconstructing it, and then building it back up with partners so that we can all kind of get to the point that you are at right now. And it's not for people obsessed with cost above all else. If the only thing you care about is cost, just go get a developer on Fiverr, on Elance, spend $10,000. You probably won't get to where you want to get with that $10,000. After you are frustrated, come back and watch this video. We'll talk about how you can fix it. What is the challenge, the core challenge as a non-technical founder? The main thing is that implementation is expensive for you in a way that it's not for technical founders. Every iteration that you want to make on your product is going to cost you money or equity or time. Time, you have runway, you have a burn rate. So the longer you take, the more money you spend, and then these things are expensive, they build. Move fast and break things was a motto at Facebook. That is a great motto when you are a technical person or you have a technical partner. But what it's really saying is that we're going to spend money to build things quickly, and then we're going to spend more money to fix them later. Again, for you, that's going to really eat into your runway. For you, mistakes are expensive. You can't just get in and fix a typo on your app. You can't go on the website and fix how one button behaves. You don't have those skills. So little changes like that, just little mistakes, can be really expensive for you as a non-technical founder. So you kind of have to get things right the first time. Part of that is doing small things the first time too, so that the mistakes that are inevitably going to be made in any development project are small, and we can fix them with the resources that we have. Partners are expensive. Now, if you have a bunch of cash in the bank, great. You can pay cash. You don't have to give away 50% of your company. Smaller if you've got multiple co-founders. But if you are going to go the co-founder route, and that's a great route to go, equity is expensive. If you really believe that this startup is going to be worth investment, worth purchase from another company later, maybe an IPO if you're really successful. If you're going to IPO at $1 billion and you gave 20% of that billion to somebody to build it for equity, that's really expensive too. So either way, whether you're going cash, quality technical partners are expensive from a cash perspective. If you're going equity, equity is ultimately very expensive as well. So that's the challenge as a non-technical founder, is that implementation is expensive, mistakes are expensive, partners are expensive, and you need partners as a non-technical founder. That does not mean that this is impossible. Non-technical founders are wildly successful. Airbnb did not have a single technical founder. Uber, early days, no technical founders. 25 plus of our clients have done this. One of them is Unicorn Wheels Up. There's a bunch that are doing really, really well still. Some are going into their 5th year of business as a startup. What you need to be successful as a non-technical founder is a process. You need a process for taking that big vision you have in your head and for extracting it, for getting it out, for getting all the little details out from every nook and cranny inside your head. You need a process for focusing that vision. So again, all of the things you want to do, how do you direct that like a laser towards success, towards customer success for your customers and towards success for you as a business person? You need a process for translating that vision. And this is a huge, huge thing. You know what you're talking about. You have the domain expertise. You've spent the last year or 2 years, 3 years, 5 years even, spending hours and hours thinking about this thing. How are you going to translate all of those deep knowledge, the deep feelings you have about that product into something that a developer or a designer can actually execute? You need a process for bridging the gap between concept, between this idea in your head and this vision, into an actual sellable product. What are the steps you need to take to go from concept to first sale? And you need a process for vetting potential partners and making sure that you have the right team building your product. There are lots of fantastic designers, developers out there, people who could be co-founders, people who are in agencies or studios, freelancers, full-time hires. You need to make sure that you're able to vet these people and to bring them into your team, and so they can do a good job. A little bit about me. My name is James Knight. I'm founder and chief nerd at nonerds.com. I use this photo as my bio photo to prove that I am as nerdy as they come. I studied math and psychology at the Barrett Honors College at Arizona State. Later on was in the online Masters of Science Computer Science pilot program at Georgia Tech. I started my coding career at a robotics company called Remotive back then. Now it is the Unicorn Zipline. After that, I spent 3 years at Google in New York. And then I left Google in 2015 and started freelancing. Later built an agency called Pembroke. That agency morphed into what is now No Nerds, No Problem, nonerds.com. And I've basically been helping non-technical founders since leaving Google in 2015. In that time, I've supported over 25 startups. These are all clients of mine at the top, and have helped support over $650 million in fundraising from top VCs like Y Combinator, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, Sorensen, lots of big name capital firms there. Now we're going to get into the process. So that was a little introduction about who I am, why I do this. Let's jump in. There are 5 questions that we have to answer as we approach development. Who, why, what, how, and when. And they have to get answered in this order. Who is our customer? Where are they? How do we find them? Why are they going to care about my product? And the answer to that is that there's some problem or pain that they have that our product is going to solve. What are we building? What is the solution to that pain or that problem? How are we building it? What's it going to look like? How are we going to launch it? And then finally, when will it be done? Which is the first question that many non-technical founders have when they talk to technical partners. They skip the first 4 and they go straight to cool, but when it'll be done. How is also, to go back to 4, how is also how much will it cost, right? These are the 5 questions that we have to answer as part of this process. Who is our customer? Why will they care? What are we building? What is the solution? How are we building it? How long is it going to take? When will it be done? That's the goal of this process. Those 5 questions map to these 3 phases. And we'll talk about a 3-week process here. The 3-week process that we use. Now, again, if you are further along in this, maybe you've already done pre-sales, you can skip week 1. Maybe you already have designs, you can skip week 2. Week 3 is where we get into the actual planning and road mapping. Weeks 1 and 2 help set us up. If we don't have weeks 1 and 2, we can't do week 3. If you're further along, you get to skip ahead a bit. I'm going to start at the beginning. We'll start with week 1. Definition. Answering who and why. So what's the old way, the traditional way, the way that most people go about defining their product? Well, what most people do is they start with an idea. They take that idea, they research the marketplace, they Google, they look for competitors, they look for people doing similar things, they look for people doing different things in similar ways. And then after they've done some research, they talk to people. Now, ideally, they're talking to customers, but a lot of folks don't talk to customers at this phase. They talk to their friends and family. They talk to their mom. And they show their mom their idea, the thing they're working on, and they get feedback. Maybe they go to friends. Maybe if you're really good, you go to customers. And they use all that feedback in combination with all the research they did and their own vision to refine the concept they have. And they take that refined concept and they build a spec, a list of features, a list of things that they think this product needs to do in order to be successful. The results of that process, the first major problem there is that it results in cargo culting. And if you're not familiar with the phrase cargo culting, it's a way to describe how people will watch what other people are doing, ideally other successful people, and they will copy the things they see that that person is doing without understanding why the person is doing them. Now, this can be a recipe for success if you copy the right things, if your why is the same as their why, but often what it results in is survivorship bias. We're copying the things we see because we can understand them, because we see them, but we don't understand why that person did them in the first place. We don't know necessarily that those things apply in our case. So for instance, we want to create a dating app specifically for people who love dogs, for people who have dogs and want to walk them with their dating partners. So we copy things from Tinder thinking that that might apply to us, but Tinder really is for a different market. So we're cargo culting. We're copying things because they seem like the right thing to do, but we're not understanding why Tinder, did them in the first place. And we're not sure, we don't know that those things apply to our use case. What it also results in is we get fake feedback, and this happens a lot when we go to friends and family. People want to be nice. Nobody wants to be the one to crush your hopes and dreams. And so we get feedback universally. Try this. Come up with the stupidest startup idea you can. Come up with Tinder that matches people to cakes. It's pictures of cakes, and you swipe on the cakes, and then don't even have an explanation for what happens when you match. Take that to a friend of yours. Take that to a family member of yours. They're going to love it. They're going to be like, that's so cool. That's such a good idea. Don't actually do that. That's a bad idea. But people want to be nice. You're going to get bad feedback from friends and family. And even if you're going to customers at this phase, everyone thinks everything sounds good when it's presented to them in this context. Everybody is open to things. Yeah, I'd like that feature. That'd be great. Sure, that sounds like it'd be better than what I'm using now. That feedback doesn't matter, though, because we're not actually asking for money. And when we actually go to a sale and we say, hey, that thing you said that you liked, cool, can I have $5 for it? That's going to change people's opinions, and we'll talk about that in a second. The other result is that we end up designing by committee. Again, because we are going out and kind of pulling these things together, the end product that we come up with, part of it's been cargo culted, part of it's things that we copied without understanding why they existed in the first place. A lot of the rest of it's going to come from this feedback that we got, and not all of it's going to be relevant. Our mom might not know the best way to make a SaaS tool to connect sellers to buyers in international marketplaces. She's going to give you feedback, though. We have to avoid designing by committee. Even if we go to customers again, customers are going to suggest things that may not actually be what they want or need. There's the famous Henry Ford quote, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And finally, the product that we're designing isn't defined by problems. It's defined by features. It's been cargo culted to the point where we're just kind of cherry picking things that we want to do. And we've moved away from the pain and the problem that originally probably kicked this idea off in the first place. So we come up with a list of things we want to do without those things necessarily being tied to a core pain experience, a pain point that our customers are feeling. This is a stat that is almost impossible for me to believe. 35% of funded startups fail because of no market need for their product. These are startups, I think this was an Axios study, CB Insights, a CB Insights study, I'll link it on the page. These were startups that had successfully secured a round of funding. So not just like, hey, I'm starting a startup, I'm going to put a landing page together. Oh, it failed. These are people who convinced venture capital firms to give them large amounts of money. 35% of those failed startups failed because nobody needed the thing they were building. Nobody thinks this is going to happen to them, but it happens a lot. It was the number one reason for these funded startups to fail. The number one reason was no market need. And there are some really high-profile examples of this. Quibi was all in the news in 2020, end of 2020, when it launched and then subsequently collapsed. Quibi spent $1.7 billion before launch. A lot of that was building content. I think like 600 million of it. So the point part was content, and they, if you're not familiar with Quibi, they were a mobile-first streaming network. So think Netflix for your phone first. They were short form. I think they were all vertical videos, 5 to 7 minutes. But they were TV shows. They were 7-minute episodes of TV shows, and they had big names. Some of them won Emmys. I mean, these were good products, good content products, we'll say. Sorry. The founders, the Jeffrey Katzenberg produced The Lion King. I don't know if you've heard of it. A slight success in entertainment. And Meg Whitman was amazing at eBay. She grew that startup from, I'm going to totally botch the numbers. It was like 300 million in sales to like 1.5 billion in the first year she was there or something. Go look up the numbers. She is a heavy hitter as a startup CEO. So it's not that like these two didn't know what they were doing. It's not that they didn't have enough money. They spent $1.7 billion on this. It was that they spent all this money before verifying that people wanted to watch TV shows on their phone and their phone first. They made a lot of excuses. They said that it was because of the pandemic, that people weren't commuting, which was kind of their whole pitch, was that people be watching these things on the train. But video viewership at this time tripled. YouTube's numbers went up by 3 times. It's a really hard sell for me that when every other video site tripled their viewership, Quibi wasn't able to capture viewers. They could have validated this concept for a lot less than $1.7 billion. So this happens, and it happens at scale. It happens with well-funded startups. It happens with successful founders. I mean, both these, like, you couldn't pick more of a dream team for a startup like this. It could happen to you, is the point. So how do we avoid this? Because again, this is the worst way for your startup to die, that you raise money, you build the product, and then no one needs it. All right. So how do we stop that from happening? Well, this is essentially what the book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, is all about. It's all about the process of building an MVP. MVP is a word that's shifted a bit in common parlance. In the Lean Startup, an MVP is the minimum amount of work product that you need to produce so that you can go one trip around the product validation cycle. And that cycle is that you come up with an idea, you build that minimum work product, that minimum viable product, you go deliver it to customers, you ideally actually try to sell it. That's why it's a viable product. It's viable in the marketplace as a sellable product. And then you take what you learn from that attempt and you go back into the ideation process and you start again. This is something that we're going to talk about a lot, is this process of story mapping. And we're going to talk about it at 3 different levels, 1 level each week. But the first level is at the offer level. And it's, what story is our offer telling? Now for this, go back to the 2 questions that we said were the goal of this week of the process. Who and why? We want to tell a story about who our customer is, where they are, what they're doing, how they're going to come up, or how they're going to find out about our product, why they're going to be interested in it, what are we selling them, what's the actual pitch, and then what's the value, the answer to the why. What is the value that we're actually going to deliver them? And what is that transformational moment like when they go from the state they were in before finding out about our product to the state they're in because of our product? And we're going to tell that story. We use visual story maps, but you can use just a flow chart. You can just describe it on paper. The goal here, though, is to tell a story. And the example I use is if we were telling the offer story of Star Wars, the first Star Wars movie. The offer story of Star Wars is that Luke is kind of sad and alone on Tatooine. He has a very boring life. He goes to space. We're not even going to get into the details of why or how. All we know is that he goes to space. He's being chased. He learns the Force being our product. He then uses that knowledge to save the day. In a moment, he lets go of the controls. The Force is how he blows up the Death Star, and at the end, he's transformed into a hero, and he is celebrated as one. That's the story we want to tell. We don't care about who's there on the ship with him. We don't care about anything in the script, what the costumes look like, or anything like that. We are telling the story about a customer who has a pain point, who is introduced to our product, is educated about it, receives the product, transforms into a new person, and then celebrates that success. They go and tell other people about it. We're going to take that story that we've storyboarded or flowcharted or just written about, and we're going to build sales materials that demonstrate that story. Now, those sales materials, depending on the product, might be a prototype, might be a proof of concept, might be a landing page. What we like to build typically is a landing page that goes into a prototype. So when I say prototype, I mean something that looks like a functional product that doesn't actually work, or it looks like it works, but it's a facade. I like to use the term Wild West prototype a lot, like those old spaghetti Western saloon facades where there's just nothing behind them. You open the doors and the desert's back there. Wizard of Oz is another term that you hear. Don't look behind the curtain. There's a guy back there. He's pulling levers. There's no actual functional wizard. It's a guy with levers, right? We're going to take those sales materials and we're going to take them to real customers, not potential customers, not our mom, and we're going to try to pitch them on it. Now, again, depending on the product, this might be, if we're B2B, we're going to make calls. We're going to book phone calls. We're going to get on the phone. We're going to show them the landing page and the offer, and we're going to try to get them to sign a letter of intent, at least, maybe even a pre-sale if we're strong enough in sales. But we want to present this offer in context of a sale, because if we don't, we're not going to get real feedback. Now, if we're B2C, we're not going to pick up the phone and call somebody. If the goal here is to get maybe we're an ad-driven social network and we need millions of customers, none of them are going to pay. The paying customers are the advertisers. In that case, we're going to do what we call a smoke test. And a smoke test is where we're going to build this landing page. We're going to build this prototype. We're going to send it out via advertisements. So maybe YouTube ads, Reddit ads, Google search, Facebook ads. Those people are going to go to the landing page. They're going to try to access the prototype. And what we're trying to do here is we're measuring response. So if we send 1,000 people to our landing page and 100 click sign up now or download app, that's a really good sign. So there's different things that we do based on customer profile, if we're B2B, B2C, etc. But the idea here again is that we're building sales materials. We're taking them to real people, real customers, and we're selling. Now, the results of this process is that we only build something, like actually build with designers and developers, after we've validated our product. We get real feedback because money talks. If I ask you if you like something, you're going to say yes. If I offer you $5 for it, or if I ask you for $5 for it, you're going to get a lot more serious about what I'm offering you. We've fixed this design by committee problem. The problems are defined by the customer. The problems are ones that we can source from the customer, but the solution is designed by us. We're the ones proposing cars to people asking for faster horses. And in this instance too, the product is defined by a customer outcome, not just a list of features. What I mean by that is that we're not just building features because we've put together this list of things that we've seen in the marketplace. We're defining a goal that the user has, the customer has. They want to be someone different at the end of this product experience. Our product gets them there. It's not that our product is a list of really cool things that they can do. Customers don't care about the things they can do with your product. They care about who they will be afterwards. So we're going to define our offer by validating who our customer is, why they want our product, and then we're going to scope our product to deliver the value in that offer. So think about this. We're not just building a list of features that we saw in the marketplace and throwing that over the fence to developers and designers. We are really dialing in our offer and then scoping the minimum amount of design and development we need to deliver the value in that offer. An example of this is Eric Mena and Sam Bernstein from Loper. Now, this is something that they did before they came to us, which is really cool. They got initial customer feedback and raised a seed round off of a concierge prototype. And a concierge prototype is, again, that Wild West, that Wizard of Oz prototype. It looks like an app. You can see here the design on the right. That looks like a mobile app. And on the phone, it kind of feels like one. You can input that data, you can hit next, but it doesn't actually go anywhere. Well, it goes somewhere. All of these answers that the customers put in here got emailed to Eric and Sam at the end. And what they would do is they would hand build a PDF response. I need to back up. I'm sorry. Loper is they're an app for connecting high school students with their ideal university. So the student fills out kind of this, not survey, but there's these prompts they fill out, and then they receive a personalized recommendation of universities that they should look into. Eric and Sam get the input from this form, this concierge prototype, and they hand-built a PDF response. They emailed that response to the high school students, and they reached out to them and asked for feedback. This was something, again, they built. They got someone off of, I think it was off of Fiverr, actually, to build this. They built it very cheaply. It's very quick to build something like this. It's very, very cheap. And they got enough quality feedback and were able to demonstrate the concept well enough that they were able to raise a seed round off of this prototype. This is a fun one that I did. I came up with an idea. I'm a big, again, to add to the nerd thing, I'm really into fantasy novels, and I wanted to learn how to write them. I'm a big fiction nerd. I read a ton about fiction writing. I listen to a lot of fiction podcasts. And I experienced this problem personally of it's very hard to find the introductory educational content for fiction writing. There's a lot of like later stage stuff, and obviously there's things like MFA programs, but you just want to start off writing and you want to get better at character. You want to get better at dialogue. There wasn't a lot of material for that. So I came up with this idea for a community where we kind of provided these guided writing challenges. You'd pick like, I want to work on character development, and you'd get a prompt for it. And then you could work with other members of the community to kind of improve one another's writing. It's just an idea I had, and I wanted to see if it was worth building. So I built this landing page. I wanted to do this in a non-technical way. So I built it using umso.com. They're a landing page builder. You fill out forms and it does all that for you. You don't have to know any code, anything. You just have to know how to write. That's it. In 1 hour, I built the landing page. I dropped it in a Reddit ad. I spent $100, and I got 30 signups in 24 hours. I think that was off of like 100 clicks. So again, like 30% response rate, positive response rate. People who tried to sign up for the actual service. Instead, they ended up getting added to a mailing list. After 1 hour of work and $100 in testing, really fantastic. I knew then that this was something I could build. Now, the problem is that it's something I can build because I don't actually know how to write these challenges. But it was a really fun process for testing kind of some of the stuff that I try to tell non-technical founders that they should do all the time. The last example I'll give here is Kickstarter. Kickstarter has done $6.5 billion in just offers. And they're pure offers. Like they say on their site, most of these, all of these, if they don't reach, even if they reach their goal, if someone wants to raise $1 million for a video game and they spend that $1 million trying to make the video game and they fail, you don't get your money back. That's the purest offer of all time, right? Like, hey, this is a thing that you might be able to have if you give me money. Give me the money and I'll see if I can get it to you. If you don't believe that you can do that with an offer that you actually are going to deliver on down the road, startups aren't for you. You need to have that confidence in what you're building. You need to have the confidence to say, hey, this is an offer. I know I can get this done. Will you pay me for it? Kickstart has proven that that's possible. So where are we? Well, we've defined our offer. We've answered who we're serving, who our customer is, where they are, how we're going to find them. And we've answered why. Why are we building this in the first place? Why is the customer going to care about it when it's done? Now we get to move on to the fun part. We get to talk about what. What are we building? What's it going to look like? What's it going to do? That kind of thing. This is really the phase of description. Now, the traditional way, the way that most people are going to handle this description phase, this what phase, is with design. They're going to take that spec that they built in phase 1, and they're going to go to designers. And those designers are going to build basically the blueprint that the developers are going to work off of. Almost literally a blueprint, right? Those designers are going to compare that spec. They're going to take that spec and use it to compare to benchmark competitors. And benchmark is a really fancy word to say people who are doing something similar or people who are doing something different in a similar way. So I think I used that Tinder example, Tinder for cakes, right? Tinder isn't competing in the cake market, but we might want to use that card interface. We had a client, Loper, who has a Tinder card interface for matching students with universities, right? Tinder is a benchmark competitor of us, even though they're not a competitor. Designers are going to take that research that they do and they're going to deliver something sexy. Design presentations always look good. I mean, designers are artists. They're professionals at visual presentation. Whatever they deliver you is going to look really good. And then those final designs are taken to developers and they're really kind of thrown over the wall. A lot of times we have designers working in a bubble. We go through rounds of feedback with them. We get something that we like and we consider it finished. What do we get with that original process? Well, one of the biggest concerns with this is that we get incomplete designs. This is super common. And what this is the designers are not developers. They're often not even product people. They don't think about a complete product. And so we'll get a design workup, a design presentation, a Figma document, Sketch, Illustrator, whatever, and it'll look awesome, but there'll be missing pieces. We'll have a way to take photos in the app, but we'll have never asked how to get camera permissions from the user. We'll have this really fancy dashboard full of awesome data that's being presented, again, beautifully to the user. We have no screens for getting access to that data, for connecting the screen with all the awesome dashboard widgets to anything that's going to actually pull this data in on behalf of the customer. When we don't include devs in this process, we also get designs that are impractical or impossible to develop. Incomplete is one thing. Another thing is that your designers design something that looks awesome that's going to take 3 times as long as a different design, just because things like blurs can be hard to do. Things like gradients can be tough to do on different screen sizes. Adding designs that look great, that a developer wasn't in the room to say, hey, that looks really cool, but that animation there is going to take me 6 months to build and it doesn't add any value to the product. Not ideal, especially not for an early stage startup, and especially not for a non-technical founder when every iteration of your product is going to be expensive. The final reason, the final result you get with this is a poorly defined product. You have an idea in your head of what you want to accomplish. You built a spec. You listed out all the features that you want. The designers turn that into the blueprint for your product, and we hand that to developers. Developers get the same list of specs that the designers got. which is really a list of features, and they get a visual blueprint of what the product is supposed to look like. They don't understand why they're building any of the things they're building. They don't understand what the end goal is, what the transformation that we're trying to deliver to the customer is. And what this results in is there's going to be missing things. There's always going to be little details that the design doesn't have present. Developers often will answer questions that they have for themselves. So if there's a detail that's missing, and there's going to be details no matter how involved this process is, the developer might answer that question themselves. If they don't understand the product context of what they're building, that can be a problem. This is especially a problem if we're working with overseas or developers that are remote, people who don't have the hands-on domain experience or cultural experience that we have. We worked with a team in India before. Fantastic team, really great work. They kept making mistakes with the way that we stored. It was a real estate app, and the way that they were storing apartment complexes in the database, they just kept breaking it. And it took us a while to figure out what was going on, but the problem was that the kind of apartment complex that they were breaking, that style of apartment doesn't exist in India. When the product is poorly defined, when they're just working off of a visual design and not something that's more complex and that's better described, there's going to be mistakes that aren't even really mistakes. They're just operating in a different context and they don't have the complete story. The average software project has a 66% cost overrun and a 33% schedule overrun. That first number is scary enough when you add in, okay, I'm going to pay $100,000. Actually, no, I'm going to pay $166,000. That's a huge change. The 33% schedule overrun is what's going to really sink you, though. As a startup, building your product isn't the only thing you're spending money on. You've got your personal costs as a founder, your personal runway, and as you approach launch, or if this is not your first launch either, you have other things that are eating into your burn rate. And a lot of these cost overruns and schedule overruns come from poorly defined products. If you ask me how long it's going to take me to build this list of 5 features, and we have designs that show those 5 features, but there's actually a whole list of 20 that are hidden underneath there. And there's a whole bunch of screens that aren't included in that design because we didn't finish the design process properly the first time. I can't give you an accurate cost estimate. Any estimate I give you is going to be based on what I can see and not on the actual iceberg of a product that's hiding underneath. An example of how this has gone wrong in the past. Andy Lin is founder of the Self-Portrait Project. Self-Portrait Project started off as an art project. Here's Andy, photo with a prototype version of it. And the idea was that Andy wanted a way for people to take photos of themselves the way that they saw themselves. So rather than looking through a viewfinder, instead you look in the mirror and you take the picture. Andy wanted to turn this into a hardware product and an app that you could come up to any of these Self-Portrait Project mirrors, control the mirror, connect to the mirror with your app, control it, take a photo, see a gallery of photos, that kind of thing. He took this idea to a big name design firm in New York. I'm not going to name them. Spent 3 years and quite a bit of money to having the design out what this app looked like. And their work product was awesome. It was sexy. It was this bound book. It was like 1.5 inches thick. This was a while ago, so I may be now exaggerating in my head how cool this book was. But it was a really cool design presentation. And it had charts and graphs and paragraph descriptions of what they were going to do. But when our team got a hold of it, it didn't work. There was entire flows of screens that didn't connect to other parts of the app. There was nothing about how we were going to connect to a mirror, find a mirror, control the mirror. There was just this super cool flow of what happened once we had the photos. There was not a word written about the software on the mirror, which is half the project. And so Andy came and asked for an estimate, and we had to be honest with him. We had to tell him, we can't estimate this. This isn't buildable as is. And this wasn't like some podunk firm. Like, this was a big name firm, and he'd spent 3 years with them on iterations and feedback, getting it into a place that he was happy with. He wasn't happy with how long they were taking. He came to us, and this is the situation we found him in. We'll talk later about what we did to turn that around. Just wanted to give the bad news version right now. So how do we fix this? How do we avoid describing with design and ending up with potentially flawed designs as a result? We're going to come back to story mapping. And again, this is something we're going to see 3 times in each one of these 3 weeks at different levels. In week 1, we talked about the story mapping being the customer story, that journey of them having a problem, encountering our product as a potential solution, acquiring it, undergoing this transformation because of it, and coming out the other end in a different state. That story is all about the customer, and our product is almost an afterthought. It doesn't even need to be well defined at that point. It's just the product solves the problem, right? How does it solve the problem? That's what we're going to figure out now. At this point is where we need to talk about the high-level actions that the user is going to take in order to achieve that transformation. So going back to the Star Wars example, in the first version of the story, Luke's on Tatooine, he leaves, he learns about the Force, he uses the Force to blow up the Death Star, and he becomes a hero. Okay, great. But how does he find out about the Force? Who does he learn about it from? What are the steps he takes to practice with it and to learn it? What does he actually do in that moment of transformation where he lets go of the controls or turns off the targeting, whatever he does, and fires and blows up the Death Star? What are those actions? Now, we're not at the level, I would say, of a script yet. We're going to get there in week 3. We're not at the level where we're describing how the product functions, the layout, the individual, every single direction that the user could take the product. We're not saying things like, as a user on the login screen, I want to be able to click a button and see an error message. We're not there yet. Where we are is, as a user who's just logged into the app for the first time, I want to see a feed of awesome content in my area. That would be a good description for like Instagram's Discover page or Explore, whatever they call it. So these are the actions and the high level events that are going to happen in our product. And the way that we're going to do this, we'll show an example visually later. We're going to put over here on the right that transformation. So Luke becomes a hero, and we're going to work from this starting state. Luke downloads the Force app in the App Store, and then we're going to trace how we get from here to there. And the idea here is that we're flowing from that initial state. The user has found out about your website. They're creating an account. The users download the app from the App Store or the Play Store. And then all the way over here, this end result that we want. And what that's going to do is it's going to force us to come up with things like sign up, login, onboarding. The user has this really cool feed of things in their area. Cool, but when did they give us location privileges? Oh, this user sees a really great list of all their friends. Okay, but how do we know who their friends are? We have to answer these as part of this process, and that's what this kind of story mapping is about. We'll show a visual example of this in a little bit. What we're going to do here is we're going to focus on product first. Product is an awful word because it can mean so many different things in so many different companies, corporations, teams. But when we talk about product, we're talking about this kind of verbal description, non-visual description of our product. We're going to do wireframes before we touch design. And the idea there is that wireframes allow us to see the product, see its functionality without getting caught up on colors or how round the buttons are. When I say wireframes too, we'll see this in a bit. Wireframes are designs that don't have any style. They're black and white. There's just squares. So we'll see those in a second. Sorry. The other thing that we're going to do here is we're going to include technical input in this revision process. Now, this is something that you can do yourself. You can do the story mapping yourself. We'll show you some examples of this process so you can do it yourself if you'd like. You can do wireframes yourself. Balsamic, Miro, you don't, pen and paper, right? At this stage, it doesn't matter how it looks. What we're trying to do is get a visual representation of the product, of the high-level stories and actions that the user can take to deliver, to receive the value that we're offering. Style comes last. We do not want to get caught up in the sex appeal until we have a really good understanding of the product that we're building. And what this results in is we end up with function over form. We end up with an app that is functional and that delivers value before we get caught up in style. Now we're going to do style. We're going to make this thing look as good as possible. But we don't need to do that yet. And if we do that now, we might actually be distracting ourselves. This also results in a complete product. We can't get into the situation where we have entire flows of the app that don't connect to other flows of the product. We can't get in the situation where we're expecting the user to have this wonderful experience, but they've done nothing to prepare themselves to get that experience. They haven't onboarded. They haven't given us access to things. They haven't created an account. And when we get technical input in this process before we close it, designs become possible and practical. Now again, wireframes are easy to produce. You can produce wireframes on your own with no design skills whatsoever. If you do go to a designer can produce a wireframe version of a product in 1/10 the time they can produce a styled version. If we build wireframes first, we get technical input on those wireframes before we go to design, we save time, we save money, and we get things right the first time. So we're going to describe our product by starting with story, moving to wireframes, and then designing, styling at the end. And a really great example of this, Shirley Vega, Tyler Rash, Hayway, we saw them earlier, and we'll go into more detail later. They had originally done some mock-ups with a design friend of theirs, not a firm, but just a friend of theirs that was a designer. They kind of described the product. The designer kind of threw together some ideas. This is their first time they built a product. So to them, those mock-ups looked great. And they took it to some developers, and all of them gave around $100,000 estimates, 90 to 110,000, somewhere in there. These were just mock-ups, so they weren't final designs. There was no product definition. Shirley and Tyler had a very strong vision of what they wanted to do, but they really hadn't laid it out in a product context. So when they came to us, we did this process with them, and these are kind of the steps of this process, visually over here on the right. Up top, we have the high-level user process, the user story, the story map up here. This is a two-sided marketplace. So we have buyers and sellers, blue and red. Yellow is where they interact. And what we did here is we did every action, starting with creates profile on the far left, that the user can do in the final product, in the big vision that Shirley and Tyler had. What we did as a part of this is we recognized that there's chunks of this that we can break off, that we don't have to do this whole product just to launch. And we identified this bottom left corner in red as something that we could build very quickly and launch very quickly. We took this whole thing and we reduced that $100,000 estimate to $53,000 because we had a complete picture of what we wanted to do. These next two steps are us taking this that we did with the client, the story map, converting that now into the user level stories that we'll talk about in a second. This is the detailed, every single direction something could go in the product. And then here's the wireframes down at the bottom that we actually went and tested with. So here's an example of kind of what this process looks like. Starting at the top, high level product story map. the story that the product is telling with the user flowing through it, getting into the more detailed steps, and then finally the wireframes at the bottom. So where are we now? Well, we already defined who and why, defined our offer and validated it, ideally. We've gone through a round of design. We've answered what we're building, what's it going to look like, what does it do, and we've done that in a way that we can transfer from one team to another. Now we have this story map. We have a list of stories that we've written, this verbal version of the product description. And when we go to development, we know exactly what to tell the developers we want, and those developers can give us an estimate that makes sense and is accurate. So that's where we are now. We're now at plan. Define. When you define your offer, that is something you can do entirely by yourself. You can use no-code tools if you really want to go the prototype route. You can use landing page builders like Unsplash, Lead Pages, ClickFunnels, I think is another one. You can build these things yourself. You can take them to customers yourself. Design, even the way that we recommend doing design, again, something you can do entirely yourself. You can build this story map yourself. You can describe these stories yourself. You can put together wireframes like the ones here at the bottom with drag and drop tools from something like Balsamiq yourself. So you can do all of this and get quite far in this process before having to involve any other partners. Plan is where you're going to have to get the people who are actually going to build this involved. We help people with phase 1 and phase 2. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Plan is where you absolutely have to have a technical person in the room telling you how they're going to build this, how long is it going to take, how much it's going to cost, when they can do it. So now this is where we want to get real designers, real developers involved. So what's the old way of doing that? Well, the traditional way of planning is via proposal. You go out, you source technical partners, you source design firms, development studios, freelancers, look for technical co-founders. You have those partners put together a proposal, an estimate of how long they think this spec and these designs that you've contributed are going to take. And then you compare proposals and you select the one that looks best. So what do you get with that? Well, for one, proposals are worthless. Estimates in proposals are typically based off of hopes and dreams. What I mean by that is that think about who is doing this estimate. If you've gone to a freelancer or a development studio, an agency, estimates, if they're going to be valuable, need to be done by a technical professional, preferably the technical professional who's going to actually do the work. If you're an agency, your highest cost employee and the one that you get the most money for billing out is the developer. It's the kind of person that you need doing an estimate. You are not going to waste days of that developer's time reviewing scopes from potential clients when you know you might close at best 5% of the proposals you look at. So a developer loses 95% of their time that they spend on this. And good estimates take time. We have to understand in depth what the product is doing, who it's for, why we're building it, all of these screens, how they function. Most estimates from most professionals are worthless. They're going to go through your scope. They're going to map it to a list of features that they kind of think need to be developed. They're going to give half week to week timelines on each one of those features. They're going to add that up. They're going to add 20% as a buffer. They're going to talk to their account manager who's going to feel whether or not they think you can afford that number. And then they're going to squeeze it down until they figure that's a price that you'll accept. This becomes a real problem with timelines. Because what they're going to do now is they're going to organize those timelines around what's easiest and not what's critical to you as a business. If this partner isn't sure that they can develop your product in the time span they give, if they're evil, unscrupulous, we'll say, they're going to do as much of it as they think they can, charge you as much as they can for it, and then leave you hanging in the last 20%. Now, most developer firms, freelancers, individuals are not nefarious. They're just not that good. So they're going to do this not on purpose, not because they know they can't reach that last 20%, but based on the idea that they're just going to do the things they know they can do. And then when they get to this part that's difficult and now the timeline has doubled, they're going to let you know that you now need to pay twice as much as you thought you did. 38% of funded startups fail because they ran out of cash. This is from a similar study from the last statistic. When you go into a development project and you do not know for certain how long it's going to cost, when you're given an estimate that an account manager, a non-technical person, probably gave to you, this becomes a very likely reality that you will not be able to reach launch because you've run out of cash. And an example was a client who came to us, Lockie Given, from nowhere. Lockie and his other co-founders were working on a location sharing app called Now Here. Now it's become Nowhere. So back then it was Nowhere. Now Here. And we'll see more on this one later again. They had gone to a good firm in LA. They had spent 6 figures on this app. And that team had gotten 80% of the way done with the product. They'd done all of the chat, login. Chat was gorgeous. It was just like basically a WhatsApp clone. It was fast. You could send photos. The app's design was great. It had this really beautiful interactive control for setting your location sharing settings. But the location sharing feature didn't work. So Nowhere had spent $100,000. They'd spent over a year in development building something that did everything but the only thing that mattered. They had a version of the location sharing working. As you can see here, the only way they could get it to work was by not ever turning it off. So this is 9.3 hours in the background for being on screen 8 minutes. It burned more battery than Pinterest or Instagram, apps that I used quite a bit at the time. We're going to see what we did to turn this around, but this is what happens when teams give estimates based on proposals. Proposals based on estimates, based on having a dev peek at a spec, give his opinion as quickly as possible, and not take the time to actually look into it. So what are we going to do instead? Well, we're going to take some time. We're going to invest in the planning phase. We're not just going to throw a spec at developers, hope for the best, trust that their estimates are accurate. We're going to spend time with them, and we're going to go back to story mapping. And this is where we are going to tell the script. We're going to write the script. And what I mean by that is we're going to get really anal on this. We're going to talk about every little thing that can happen, every little action the user can take, every scenario that they could be in that would enable them to take an action. So an example, we're on the login screen. Now, again, in the previous phase, we said as a user opening the software for the first time, the app or the website, I want to log in. That was last week. That was plenty sufficient for phase 2. In phase 3, we're going to list out all of the little things that can happen at login. As a user who is at login who doesn't have an account, I want to switch to sign up. As a user who is at login who can't remember their password, I want to go to a forgot password flow. As a user who is on login, who has put in their email and password, but put in the wrong password, I want to see an error message. As a user who is in login, who has put in we're going to put in every single scenario, all of the different actions they can take, and we're going to list these out in individual stories. We'll show an example of what this looks like shortly. This is something that you can do on your own entirely. I would recommend pulling in a developer. Ideally, the developer that you're planning on working with. But if you have a friend, story mapping is something that they might be able to help you with. You need to involve technical partners in the planning phase because you need to have an idea of the technical architecture that you're going to be employing in the execution. This is going to cost money. Or if you have a technical co-founder, it's going to take time out of theirs. But you need to do this now because what you don't want to do is spend spend $100,000 building 80% of your product only to find out that 20% is impossible. Now, I'm not saying you have to spend weeks proving everything, but at least just spend some time here with technical individuals who can research and architect. We're going to plan our project in the milestones, the deliveries that we have, around the parts that are business critical or most challenging. What I mean by that is if there is a piece that when we look at it as a technical person and we go, oof, that location sharing, I'm not sure how we're going to handle that, that's first. Because if we spend a month on location sharing and we get nowhere, we can revisit the entire project versus spending 11 months on everything else and then trying to do that in month 12. Alternatively, we could focus on what's business critical. And this is really, whatever you feel more comfortable starting with. If there is a business piece that you want to prove, part of the offer, you've said that you can deliver X value and you're not actually sure that you can deliver that value, that needs to go up front too. Now, if you have something that's business critical and you have another thing that's super challenging technically, which one goes first? It's up to you. I would pick business critical. It doesn't matter if something's technically feasible if it doesn't deliver the offer value. Offers come first. We're going to plan our releases around business milestones. So it's not just, hey, you've given me this spec and I'll have it to you in about 6 months. It's, hey, you've given me this product. We're going to build it, but you have a conference that you want to go to in 2 months. What can we deliver in 2 months that you could show off at that conference and actually start to generate interest, maybe even start signing LOIs, that kind of thing? You've got a music festival that you really want to test this at, which is something we did with Nowhere. Okay, we don't need the whole app done, but could we test this core feature, this core functionality at that music festival in 3 months? We want to include these business milestones in our planning process so that we're not just planning our business around when the app's going to be done. It's the other way around. And what are the results of this process? Well, for one, proposals are actually valuable. They include a list of every little task developers need to get done. Those are the user stories. We've involved technical partners and planned out the challenging parts. We've also built a kind of a business roadmap, right? We know when you're going to need certain things from a business perspective, and we've aligned the product team, the design and development team, with those business timelines. Our timeline is actually going to be accurate. Now, it's not going to be perfect. Changes happen. There are delays. Wow, a really great example on Nowhere was about after we took over, about a month into the project, Apple announced a major change to how they were handling location access, and it threw a wrench in our plans. Those things happen still. But your timeline's not going to get derailed because you had no idea that the thing that you wanted to do wasn't possible in the first place. I already mentioned this, sorry, with the proposals are valuable, but it's worth saying again, roadmaps align with business needs and not the other way around. You're not just sitting around waiting for your product to be done. You have deadlines from a sales and marketing and operations perspective that the product timeline is working with you to hit. And one of the most important pieces about pulling people in at the planning phase, about investing some time or money in doing this together, is that you get a chance to vet your technical partner. one of the hardest things as a non-technical person is evaluating the work product of a technical person. You have no idea to tell if they're telling the truth, if it's actually theirs, how much they did, what was their contribution. I can go into Git and see line by line which parts of a project were written by which developers. I don't think that you're going to do that. This gives you a chance to test somebody in a real technical environment. You're only going to spend a week here, maybe 2 if this is your first time doing this. So whether it's a co-founder, someone that you want to be sure is worth the equity investment, or an agency, a studio, a freelancer, you get a chance in this process to see how well you work together, to make sure that they are doing their technical due diligence, that they're a capable technical partner, and that you enjoy working with them on a person-to-person level. It's very important. So an example of this going correctly. Mason, Alec, Taylor, Drew at Blueverse. We saw them at the very beginning of this video. They're building a private, self-monetizable social network is the best way I'll describe it. We're still in development there, so I don't want to give away too much of what they're doing. But they're building a social network where you control the monetization of your own data. We did this process with them. Again, here's some examples. This is a design at the top right. Here's a list of the user stories actually in Jira here. These are actually the higher level ones. If I had opened these up and done this correctly, you'd see the individual ones in there. You can see some of the numbers there. So we had, like, for their initial MVP, which is only one little red square of the story map up above, we had 85 stories for a very small portion of the app. And so that kind of gives you an idea of how detailed these user stories get. For, again, it turned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sticky notes into almost 90, almost 100 stories. They took our prototype that we built, this list of user stories, this story map that showed kind of the whole vision, the timeline that we built, the estimate that we gave for both the MVP and then the larger vision, and they closed a 6-figure seed round with that information, with the design prototype and the timelines and estimates. And they closed that round because they were able to walk into an investor meeting, describe their vision in a way that the investor could grok instantly, because it was based around this value proposition to a customer. They were able to show exactly how they were going to spend the money they were asking for. We are going to build these 6 major chunks. The first one has these 6 features. There are these 90 user stories included in those 6 features. Those 90 stories are going to take 8 weeks for us to build. Here is the cost. Here is an estimate for building the remaining part of the story map. Here is the design that we did, a clickable prototype for this. We walked out of this process with a full version of the product, basically with nothing behind it. And they took that and closed a 6-figure seed round, more than covering the cost for the whole development, which is actually really cool. They got their whole vision, everything they want to accomplish, they got cash for. So we're going to plan our product by defining success and then building a roadmap towards that success. Not by building a spec, getting an estimate, and hoping for the best. So to recap, we're going to start off by defining our offer, by answering who and why. Who is our customer? Why are they going to care? We're going to describe that product, not with design, but with product work. Design comes last. We're going to answer what. What are we building? What's it going to look like? What does it do? And then we're going to invest in planning up front. We're going to answer how. How are we going to build it? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? And we're going to start adding some when. When will it be done? When can we deliver this? Timeline, road mapping. We are going to define not through cargo culting, not through just researching the marketplace, making decisions based on what we see, whether or not we understand what we're copying, but by defining and validating an offer with actual customers. We're going to design, that should say describe, sorry, not with sexy visuals based on a list of features, but through story and wireframing and then styling. And we're going to plan not by writing some RFP and then just relying on our partner's intuition and hoping for the best, but through an actual road mapping process. And why are we going to do all that? Because it allows us to lean into what makes you, a non-technical founder, your vision, not your technical skills, and it lets your business define your product and not the other way around. We're not just sitting around hoping for the best, waiting till this thing is done. We're defining a business with business goals, and we are building a product to support those goals. So what are our options for accomplishing this, for doing this process? Well, the first obvious one is that you manage this process yourself. The pro of managing this yourself is that you save money. You don't have to pay someone else to do this. You don't have to give away any equity. Another pro is that it lets you build your dream team. You can go find an engineer that has 15 years of domain experience in the exact domain that you're building within. You can find a designer that the aesthetic is exactly what you dreamed of when you were thinking about this product a year ago. And once you build that dream team, you get to retain total control. You're going to be responsible for setting the product and design direction. You're going to be doing a lot of the execution yourself, especially at that product level. You're going to learn a lot about product development, product design through this process. Now, the biggest con of managing this process yourself, yes, you save money, you lose time. And time can turn back into money. We talked about runway. If you are burning $5,000 a week on sales, marketing, or even just $500 a week on yourself, rent, food, that kind of stuff, the longer it takes for you to get to a place where you're generating revenue or to where you're able to raise money, the more money you are spending in the process. So time can also be money. You get to build your dream team, but you got to go find all those people. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to find good talent with sites like TopTal, 10X. We've got Dribbble and Behance on the design side, Elance, Upwork, Fiverr. But once you find them, you got to vet them. And now all of the people we just described, all the places you can go find them, well, now we have that paradox of choice where now you can go find thousands of professionals in an hour. How do you know which ones are actually capable of delivering the work that you need them to deliver? How do you know that the team you saw on Behance has actually uploaded their design work to Behance? You have to hire those people. Contracts take time, negotiation takes time, interviews take time, and then you have to manage them. And if you've never managed creative professionals, designers, developers, that sort of professional, it's hard. Developers will have days where they don't accomplish anything. And it's because they're spending day and night trying to figure out why the database, which worked on Tuesday when they left the office, Wednesday morning wouldn't start up. It's been crashing all night. It doesn't work. These are things that you have to deal with creative professionals. There's going to be delays that are not in their control. And as a non-technical professional, you don't always know why. You're also going to lose out on an existing expertise. Yeah, you're going to learn a lot and you're going to retain total control, but you don't have time to become an expert in every single aspect of your business. You are going to, at some point, have to rely on other people. It might be helpful to do that earlier on, sometimes. The other obvious answer here is that you find a technical co-founder. The biggest pro, and this one cannot be understated, good partners make great businesses. Without Pato and Stephanie, No Nerds would not be the company that it is. We would not be successful right now. I can't even pretend like I can do what Pato and Stephanie do as well as I do. Co-founders cost less cash. Now, a capable professional that's been in their career for a while is going to expect some sort of remuneration relatively early. That means you probably have to go raise earlier with a good technical co-founder. That said, there are going to be people who are more willing to work for equity and equity alone for longer. That might, though, have to be as a side project because they have to have salary elsewhere. But in the grand scheme of things, you don't have to pay them the same that you do someone else because you're paying them in equity. And finally, having someone invested 50% equal terms with you, it gives continuity to the project. They're there with you through thick and thin. I try to be there for my clients as much as possible, but I'm never going to be invested at the same level as a technical co-founder. The cons are that good partners make great businesses. Bad partners destroy companies. Nothing will crater your startup faster than a bad co-founder. A lawsuit is infinitely easier to handle than a bad co-founder. And sometimes you don't know that they're bad until it's too late. Equity is expensive. If you really believe in the future of the startup and you're going to have an exit, a successful exit at some point, you're giving away 50% of that exit. So yeah, you don't have to pay them in cash, but you are giving them a lot of value. And finally, finding someone capable, someone that deserves to be invested at that level, is very difficult. There are tons of professionals out there that are capable of being good technical co-founders. A lot of them are working very good jobs. Even in a smaller market than Silicon Valley or New York, starting comp for a software engineer is $100,000. If they're working at Google or another FANG, especially if they're in one of the big markets, they could start closer to 200. It's not unheard of to be making above $300,000 total comp a few years into your career as a software professional. That is a lot of opportunity cost that you are asking them to give up, to take, so that they can build your vision. When I was at Google, I still get these requests, but when I was at Google and I had that brand name on my LinkedIn, I got requests 3 to 4 times a week to come join someone's startup. Some of them were valid requests. They were valid startups with decent offers. A lot of them weren't. And it got to the point where getting one was kind of like, oh my God, another one of these. So you're not the only person that's going to be reaching out to these people if they're not friends of yours, if you don't know them already. You have to deal with the market reality of what you're offering versus what they can find in a more secure fashion versus the other offers they're receiving from other founders. The other option for this process, for managing this process, existing companies exist that do exactly this. So the world in 2022 is small. There are really fantastic providers all over at all different price levels, all different quality levels. Our development team is in Argentina. I've worked with amazing teams and professionals in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, South Asia, Southeast Asia. One of the best freelance developers I ever worked with from a small town in Kazakhstan. It's so easy now with the internet to find really great teams and professionals wherever you need to. And there are experts in this process that are also easy to find. If we're talking about that first week, which is modeled kind of after the Google Ventures Design Sprint, this rapid prototyping and testing week, AJ and Smart and Design Sprint Ltd are two firms that do exactly this. Like literally, they do that first week and that's it. That's their only offer. Horizon is a design studio in Montreal. Beautiful work. We reached out to them a couple months ago. We had more design work than our team could handle, and I love their stuff. Really impressed with Horizon, so that'd be kind of week 2. And then on the planning and development front, companies like Fueled build, I don't even know, hundreds of apps a year. They've got accolades, they've got awards, they build for big brand name companies. There's so many experts in design, development, planning, road mapping, offer validation that you can go find and contract to do exactly this process. I said this already in the first bullet point. But there's a huge range of cost and quality. So if you want to get something done cheap and dirty, find someone on Fiverr. If you want to go really all in and get this done perfectly, these companies above, great examples. Now, the cons of this is that quality partners are expensive. AJ and Smart Design Sprint Ltd costs about $20,000 just for that first week experience. So that's kind of that offer validation week. His Own does $8,000 a week, and they say their average project is 5 to 10 weeks. This was when I reached out to them a couple months ago. You're looking at $40,000 to $80,000 just for design. Again, not for any of the planning piece, not for the validation piece. Fueled, great company, great work product. They say their average project costs $300,000 to build. That is so much money. That is, for us, that would be the biggest app you can think of. We could copy for $300,000. So that's a lot of money. Affordable partners, ones that aren't these experts, they vary wildly in terms of quality. It's very, very hard to tell up front, especially on the design front. Looking at portfolios are the best of the best that they've done. There's selection, so you don't get a good feel for the actual final work product. Something that, if you've never worked overseas too, linguistic and cultural distance has a cost. Now, linguistic distance is easy to understand. It's that you're talking in English and they might not be native English speakers. There's always a chance for misunderstandings, misconceptions. Cultural distance is important too, though. This is the idea that the person who's building the software might not have the cultural experience that you're building it for. If you are hiring a development team in a town in India and you're trying to get them to understand what it's like to be a affluent mother meeting other affluent mothers in Central Park because that's what your app does, that's a lot of cultural distance. There's a big gap between those experiences, the one that you're trying to build and the one that these builders have. It results in distance in the product. Also, with the affordable guys, you often have little to no recourse. If they build 80% of the product, they charge you 80% of the fees, and then they disappear, or they can't do it, or they say, okay, now we need 80% more. We need to double our scope. You're kind of out of luck. They're in India. What are you going to do? You're going to fly over there, squeeze the money back out of them? Now, there is one existing company that I did not mention yet. Us. No nerds, no problem. We help non-technical founders manage their tech so that you can focus on growth. We work with founders across the early stage development process. We also work with founders later on. I want to focus today on the early stage. We have clients that have worked with us for over 2 years now. So we do long-term development as well. I want to focus on this getting started process. It's the most fun part. We help with folks who are in a number of early stage positions, just starting out, not sure how to get started, done that legwork on the initial offer, just ready to start design and development, people with existing designs, internal, external firm, whoever did them, ready to get development done, people who have existing development work. So maybe you're at that 50%, 60% mark. They're not happy with the progress. They need help getting to the finish line. And then founders who already have products in the marketplace who want to build that V2, want to add that next set of features, that sort of thing. We're going to look now at examples of our clients that we've worked with from across these kind of 5 groups. So this is for founders who have an idea but are not sure how to get started. We're going to start at the beginning. Week 1, define. Week 2, design. Week 3, plan. And then move into development. Our first example is Blueverse. Mason, Alec, Taylor, and Drew. Taylor came out of this again, immediately said, I'm on fire. Mason said, we've had ideas flowing for so many months. Now that we finally get to put them in paper, it feels good. When Blueverse came to us, they had an enormous vision. I mean, really enormous, really big, not just vision, but what they want to accomplish is big, and it's influential. They had a 2-page Word document, was as much as they had prepared for development. a bunch of features on it. They had some sketches as well, kind of some hand sketches. This is their first startup. They're young, but they're smart guys, and they had no funding. They had pieced together enough for this initial process with us from friends and family, but that was it. Not enough, no money to build anything yet. Through this process, they got a sales prototype in 1 week that they were able to demo with potential customers. The full product design and roadmap done after 3 weeks. And they took that design and roadmap and closed a 6-figure seed round just off the road mapping. Not a line of code had been written yet. And they were able to close a seed round off of the materials we produced in these 3 weeks. And here are some of those materials. I showed you guys this on the left before, just to give you an idea again of how big their vision was. What we decided to start with for about an 8-week development time is that one square in the middle here. These are some examples of the designs that we did. This shows the product directives on them, so that this is the wire framing process. These ones have a little bit of styling on them. This is after we've done wireframes and we're transitioning to style now. You can see also we like to put directives for the devs so that people understand the context when they look at these designs, what they're looking at. Devs know what they're building. And yeah, this is some stuff from Blueverse. They're still in development, so hopefully by the time this video is out, there'll be more to see on our site from them, but this is what we have so far. I don't think the sound will play through the way that I'm recording this. This entire presentation is linked on our site. These videos are there as well, so you can actually go and hear their review. This is coming right out of a session with them. You can hear those quotes I said earlier in their own words. Definitely worth checking these out. It gives you a really great kind of view into the process. Another example of a client of ours that came day one, had an idea, did not know how to get started. Shirley Vega, Tyler Rash of Hayway. Shirley and Tyler are consultants. They are domain experts in the area of their product they're building. Shirley came out of the process and said, working with you was perfect because you had that outside of the box thinking and you could better organize the thoughts we had. Something that we would discuss for hours, for days. In less than 2 weeks, we were able to reach that level of detail with you guys, with our team. Hayway, just like Blueverse, had an idea for a product. Theirs came from their consulting practice. They had no experience with product development or startups, design, anything like that. And the spec that they'd built initially, they were getting quotes for around $100,000. After the 3 weeks, we'd organized this entire existing supply chain process. I'm sorry, I always jump in. I don't never say what we actually built. So Hayway is a product that connects wholesale buyers in Korea with wholesale sellers in Latin America. The existing supply chain process here is enormous. There's this insane back and forth. You meet the person, you do the sample process. There's all these conversations. There's third parties like trade organizations and chambers of commerce, et cetera, et cetera. So we built out this enormous supply chain map before we did our customer offer story. And then we identified where in that map our product fit in. The final result of this whole road mapping process was that the roadmap that we gave them was less than 50% what some of these other quotes were. Hayway just launched. We just launched that literally this week. So hayway.io, you should be able to see it. This I wanted to show. This is the existing supply chain map that we did. Really detailed. This is without our product. So to show you the level of detail that we do try to get into in this process so that you can see we are trying to understand the scenario your customer already lives in so that we can deliver value within that context. Again, I can't get the video to play. It'll play, there's no sound. This is a longer review than we usually do. This is almost 12 minutes long. We really go into the process. Shirley's connection's not that great, so we lose her a couple times. Go watch this. It'll give you a really great firsthand experience from our clients of what this looks like after the fact. Now, for those of you who have already done that initial legwork, You've validated your offer. You know exactly what you want to build. You just need help getting design and development done. We're going to skip that first week. We're going to go right into design, and then we're going to go into planning and development after that. And Loper is a really good example of this version of the process. Eric Mena, Sam Bernstein, the two founders, they came out of the process, said, we've got more done in the last 4 hours than Sam and I have achieved in the past couple of weeks. I wish we did something like this a couple of months ago, Sam said. Loper, I mentioned this earlier in the video, they came to us with an existing concierge prototype, something that they had built very quickly, very cheaply. I think they used Fiverr or Upwork. And they had used that to test their initial offer, to figure out exactly what they wanted to build, to raise some money, and then they came to us to actually get design and development done. They had a large-scale vision. They had a really big idea of what they wanted to do, but they were having trouble converting that into an actual actionable roadmap, an actual step-by-step plan to launching this product and getting it out the door. And this is just me bragging a little bit. It's the only time I'll brag. They were actually had another development firm lined up. They were interested in getting help on the design front. They wanted to do the sprint process, then hand development off. Instead, we handed off product and design Friday. And I think Friday at 8 p.m., about 3 hours after we had a final delivery call, I got a text from Eric saying, we're green for development on Monday. So we poached that development project from another client. But yeah, this process is a lot of fun. So it's because of the process. After 2 weeks, because again, we lopped that first week off, we had a full design and roadmap for their MVP for the initial launch. And they went and took those materials, the roadmap and the design prototype, and they used that to schedule initial sales conversations. We started development on Monday after delivering on Friday. So super fast turnaround time. It was really fun. And this, I wanted to give you an example of design. So this is the design prototype. You can see that we're giving CSS styling level directives to the devs so they know exactly what they need to build. We've got instructions on the animations here as well. So this is Loper's design. Loper should be live in the App Store as well by the time this video comes out. We're in testing right now before launch, so hopefully by the time you're watching this, you can go to the App Store and download Loper. More screenshots. This is the home screen, and this is what the university details page looks like on Loper. Another video. Again, please go watch these. I can hear it.
Cool, yeah. How it went, how you guys.
To be honest, I
go
wish
check
I did
them out.
something like this
one short, 2:30. This one also just coming out of the session, so you get kind of that like fresh response. Hayway's video was a couple weeks after. Now, for founders who already have existing designs, internal, external, doesn't matter where they came from, you just need help with development. We can skip the first 2 weeks and just do the plan. Part of the planning week, though, is going to be a review of design. And we have had clients come with designs like Andy Lynn of Self Portrait Project, where we've had to say, hey, actually, we got to go back. This isn't sufficient. Andy, again, came with this Self Portrait Project idea, had existing designs from another firm. The designs weren't sufficient, so we ended up having to do design. But once we got the designs fixed, we did go into development. We did do a sprint process with him where we actually built a prototype of the mirror. I'll show a photo of that in a second. And this is what Andy said about the process. After 3 years of other agencies promising a lot but delivering little, getting to test a prototype after just 1 week was very cool. From the first time we sat down, I really felt James got what I was trying to do. Andy, again, had spent 3 years with an existing design agency. No actual progress. The existing designs were incomplete. If we'd built them the way they were, the app wouldn't do what it was supposed to. And the app involved a hardware product, but they'd done nothing. There had been no thought given to this entire hardware half, right? He needed a prototype for investor demos. No one had thought about anything on that side. We delivered that hardware prototype in 2 weeks. I'll show a photo of it. Really fun. The app, we did the whole app development after that. It's in the App Store. You can go through and see the photos. There's over 850,000 photos captured through the self-portrait project to date. Most of them are visible in the app itself. Some are private, so you can't see them. And the app is at 4.8 stars in the App Store. So really, really worked out well. Here's the listing. You can see some of the photos. The photos are super fun. So go check these out too, because they're self-portrait. You are standing in front of the mirror. You can see yourself. You get to frame. A lot of them are at bars. So a lot of them too are people who've had a couple of drinks and are in a good mood. So they're really fun photos. And this is one of my favorite photos from my career. This is a partner of mine on the right, Sam. This is Andy on the left. This is his hardware mirror prototype that he brought in, the camera and the mirror. Running, I think there's a Raspberry Pi somewhere in this photo. It might be behind the mirror. We built this prototype software hardware piece on the Raspberry Pi. Sam's holding in his phone an iOS app that we built that was literally just a button. It was just a giant button that would connect to this Pi. You'd hit the button, and then what Andy is looking at here on the laptop are the actual photos coming from the camera onto the device. Really fun to test this that quickly. We got the photo, he hit the button, and the photo showed up, and Andy went, whoa. This is the best reaction you could possibly get from a client. Whoa. So it was really cool. Now, for founders with existing development work on their product who are stuck, who you've made some progress, you're having trouble getting to the finish line, maybe you're not happy with the quality, maybe it's going too slow, maybe you're actually stuck. There we do a 2-week process, but it's a little different. Instead of design, we're going to spend a week reviewing the existing code base, seeing what we can salvage, trying to identify the problems, and then we're going to go into a week of planning where we figure out what we're going to do to fix this. Great example of this, Nowhere. Founders are Lockie Given, PC Valmorbida, and Jonathan Zawada. Jay-Z, Jonathan Zawada, is an artist. Go check him out on Instagram. He does amazing projects. He took over the Sydney Opera House for a couple of weeks and what do you call it? Projected art onto the Sydney Opera House. Does lots of just bizarre and fascinating stuff. So go check him out. He's a super cool guy. Lockie and PC are cool too. They don't have art Instagram. So Lockie talking about this sprint process, this kind of review audit that we did. After an entire year of working with another firm, our app just did not work. The core feature was broken and the app drained the battery. James was able to research the problem and find a workable solution in a matter of weeks. So before Lockie came to us, they had spent 6 months and $100,000 with another development firm. But like he said, the core feature did not work. It was a location sharing app, and you could not accurately, consistently get the user's location. When it worked, the only way that it worked, the only way that it actually got location was by persistently running in the background, and it would drain a full user battery in about 2 hours. So you take your phone off the charger, and then 2 hours later, even without ever opening the app, it would kill your battery. That would have never gotten through the App Store, too, as part of that. Even if we had submitted that, they would never have allowed it. We did this review process. I threw a bunch of ideas at the wall for how we could fix it. We tried a bunch of them. We got it fixed in a single week during that review audit, during the sprint. I was actually... I had one device sitting at home running, and I had my other device with me, and I lived in Valencia at the time, Valencia, Spain. I was biking around the city. I had plotted out points on the map where I knew I would, if this was working, that I would get specific updates. And I rode around, and I got the updates, and it was a really big deal. Sent it to Lockie. The battery issue was resolved. And then over the next few months, we did some other development work, launched the app to the App Store, and it's currently at 5 stars. So go check it out. This is live. It's in the App Store. Nowhere, spelled with a K. Nowhere. Yeah, and the design was actually part of the design was done by us. The art direction for the design was done by Jonathan, by one of the co-founders. He's an artist. He came up with this beautiful circles concept you see here. It was really fun to work with him. For founders who are already in the marketplace that want to go to that next level, you want to add more features to your app, you want to redesign or redevelop it, maybe you did kind of a real cheap, quick MVP. For them, we recommend doing the 3 weeks because we kind of need to start at the beginning again. We need to understand where you are, all of the things you've done to date, and then how we're going to go somewhere else, move forward. And a great example of this was Wellness for Humanity. Leanne Pham is the founder. Leanne said James and his team stepped in at a critical moment in Wellness for Humanity's trajectory, delivered exactly what we needed to hit our deadlines and expand the public's access to quick and easy COVID testing. Without them, the launches of our national vending machine network and our flagship New York clinic would not have been the successes they were. Leanne was founder at a clinic that popped up during the pandemic. They grew extremely rapidly. They didn't exist, and then suddenly they had, I think, 5 clinics in 3 states. They had upcoming deadlines with partners, specifically with these vending machines that they wanted to roll out, but they had completely stalled on their own side in terms of making progress. They were using overseas developers. They had some Salesforce developers that they were trying to build this system with, and it just was not working. They were not making progress. And the clinics were starting to suffer. I think they had 2 full-time employees who had to work up to 2 to 3 hours every night after the clinic closed, filing paperwork. That's how much volume they were doing at these clinics. It's not sustainable. After this process, after this sprint, we launched the vending machines at the international airports. We designed and developed a custom clinic management system for their clinics. The COVID testing was unique in the way that it needed software. Off-the-shelf solutions didn't work. We did the design for that during the sprint process. And we launched a custom booking system. Again, the kind of off-the-shelf checkout cart systems didn't really work well for testing, so we had to build something custom. This is a screenshot of the booking widget that we built and installed on their existing websites. This is feedback from the nursing team, the team that ran the clinics. James and Josh, thank you so much. Everything looks so good, really good. I'm excited to get this implemented. Here are some notes I took yesterday. So this was mid-sprint. We actually demoed some of the prototype work that we'd done. This is the feedback we got. So nice to get this a week in from actual users. And this, again, this is the end result. So we were able to roll out these vending machines. We were able to identify exactly what we needed to get done for the partners, get it done as quickly as possible. The vending machines were actually featured on The Tonight Show, which is the first and probably only time that my work will be featured on The Tonight Show.
Vending machines with COVID home tests being the only time a vending machine purchase
is pretty funny. It's very Jimmy Fallon. But yeah, that was Wellness for Humanity. Now, the last example I want to show here is actually the most important example in here. And this is for founders who don't want to waste their time and money building something that isn't going to work. You'll notice here, we have the 3-week sprint process. Excuse me. We're going to define, design, and plan. But if this is not going to work, we're not going to develop. This is Sachin Galaya, founder of Replenish, CEO of Alpine Vapors, a marijuana derivative company. Sachin said, going back to the overall process, I am really enjoying it and think it's 100% worth the cost. I've learned a ton so far and really appreciate the depth. Now that we're in it, I can't imagine how it could have gone any other way. Sachin came to us and had an idea for a startup inspired by his experience as a cannabis CEO. As a producer and distributor of cannabis products, he had no insight at all into how long these products were lasting on shelf, when a dispensary was out of his product. And so his reps would show up on site and they'd be like, hey, where are the Alpine Vapors products? And they'd be like, I don't know, we've been out for like 6 months. So he researched existing solutions, tried to figure out how to put something together himself, found some other developers, got a quote from them. It was several $100,000, and what they wanted to build was an API. It wasn't even a product. He came to us. We did this sprint process. We built a prototype and tested it with actual customers after 1 week. We reduced that quote from a couple $100,000 to well under $100,000. We actually increased the scope. They wanted to build an API. We wanted to actually build a functioning product. And we shortened the timeline by a month. I think the original timeline was 4 months, and we said we could do more work in less time. The most important thing here, the feedback that we received in the research that we did during this 3 weeks demonstrated that the project was more challenging than Sachin had originally thought. What that meant was that Sachin looked at this, he spent a little bit of money on this sprint, and instead of spending $200,000 with this other team and building a product that he couldn't sell because it was too difficult, he said, this is not worth my time, this is not worth my money, and I'm not going to go forward. We were ready to go, we had everything ready, we had the devs ready, we decided not to. This is some of the work product. This is, again, like a supply chain map, just like on Hayway. The supply chain for marijuana is extremely complicated. This was actually even a smaller version of it. So yeah, we did this, and then we came back with this one, I've got this backwards. This is the product map. So after we did this giant supply chain map, the parts that our product fits in are here in gold. And this is the prototype. It's a clickable prototype, no code involved, just design. We tested it with actual dispensaries and also some consultants in the industry. And that's where we found out that the things that we were asking them to do were difficult for them to do, and that the value that was being received for doing it just wasn't something that they were interested in. So what will this process do for you? Well, for one, you're going to go from idea, from concept, from vision to sellable offer in just 1 week. So that's everything that you need to sell to customers, raise capital. That's an offer. We're going to take that offer and turn it into a high-level product story and a fully clickable wireframe prototype in week 2. Now, if we skip week 1, that's going to be the goal of week 1, right? That includes every little feature we need to develop to get you to launch. We try to target an 8-week maximum for getting you to launch. Sometimes launch doesn't mean a public launch. Sometimes it's an internal launch, a beta launch, a pilot program. But we want to get a functioning product in the hands of real customers in no more than 8 weeks. If we can do 4, awesome. We're going to take that clickable prototype, and in week 3, we're going to wrap it in a sexy design, make it beautiful, add in your branding, and we're going to have our dev team come in and spend time researching what it's going to take to actually develop. And then the cross team, excuse me, is going to build a full development roadmap, complete with an exact timeline and a guaranteed cost estimate. And that's one of the most important things. We guarantee the costs that we're coming up with during this process. Because we can. Because we've spent the time to do this. So what does this process actually look like in practice? Well, week 1, you're going to define your offer. And on your own, that means researching your idea, showing it off to friends and family, maybe customers if you're good, and then you're going to build a list of features and hope for the best. Hope that you've selected the right features. With our offer sprint, we're going to start with a 1-week offer workshop. We're going to do 2 days of intensive sessions. We're going to build your offer story, describing how customers will encounter and acquire your product, receive that transformation. We're going to build a landing page to generate interest, and a sales prototype that actually demos the offer. We'll show some examples of that in a second. The workshop is the meat here, and those 2 of the testimonials I showed you earlier were coming right out of one of the sessions of the workshop. We've asked people in the past how they feel at the end of day 1, and most people at the end of the day 1 want to go to bed. They're done. These things are intense. We start off with the interviews. You your co-founders, anyone else that you want to pull in. Well, you can do up to 5 of these in a session. 20 to 30 minute interviews, deep diving on your experience and your vision with the product. And what we're trying to do here is identify moments of opportunity. And those sound like complaints typically. If you're describing your daily workflow and you say something sucks, that is a good sign that that's something we might be able to fix with our product. So we're going to keep things positive, and anytime we hear an opportunity, anytime we hear a pain point, we're going to turn it around into a how might we? How might we fix that pain point? An example would be you're talking about how when you have to make cold calls, you call the person, they don't pick up, and then you play phone tag, and it's just such a pain in the ass. How might we solve the phone tag problem? Really simple, right? We're not getting into the details here. We're just trying to map out this opportunity. And this is something you can do yourself. You can do these interviews with you and your co-founders, with friends, with potential customers, consultants. You can run these interviews, build these how might we's yourself. What we do once we're done is we go back and we categorize them to try to get a feel for the different areas that we've noticed opportunity. And a lot of times you get some that are big, like discovery and validation work here. This was for Hayway. After we've got all these opportunities and we've kind of all now have an understanding, a basic understanding at least of what we're building, we like to think big picture. So first we start positive. What are the long-term goals? We'd set different time scales, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And we talk about where we want to go. This is sometimes called the Polaris in the design sprint process. And the idea here is that the long-term goal that we're agreeing on in this process, later on when we have disagreements or we're not sure what's the best way to go, this long-term goal acts as the Polaris, as the North Star that we point our ship back at when we get off course. When we're not sure if we should go down path A or path B, and path A points in our long-term goal and path B takes us down a side road, that's a good sign that path A is the right choice. We turn this around and we go, all right, we've talked about all of the things that we want to happen. What is everything that could go wrong? We like to remain positive though, so we're going to flip that again. And we're going to turn these things into questions. What are questions that we can ask and answer to kind of reduce this risk, reduce this volatility in the project? So for instance, when we were talking about Loper, one of the concerns was all of these schools might look the same. And if you get 20 potential universities you could go to, and they're small name schools, how can you tell the difference between St. Cloud State and Minnesota State? They're just down the street from each other. They're not that different. So instead of going, oh man, we can't make these schools feel unique, we said, how or can we make schools feel unique? And that's something that we wanted to answer in this design process. It was a critical business question that we had to answer early on. Next, we do the map. And this is really where we start taking all of this, the questions, the interviews that we did, the long-term goals and the questions, and started to actually turn this into a direction for the product. Depending on your product, we might do 2 maps. For supply chain products where there's an existing supply chain, we like to do a supply chain map first. This is an example from Hayway, and then a product map afterwards. But what we're doing here is trying to understand all the different processes that exist, the way that our product's going to fit into those. If we're doing a prototype, a clickable prototype, a sales prototype, we're going to storyboard that out together. This is done in Miro, live. Everyone, all 8 of us on the phone together. We're going to hammer this out. Typically what it is I sit here and do really awful ones, and then Carolina, our UX lead, fixes them on the fly. She's very good at fixing all of my mistakes. Really, really lucky to have her. And we're going to storyboard this out, and then offline, the designers are going to turn it into a presentable sales prototype that looks and feels like the final product, but doesn't have anything behind it. There's no actual tech or code involved. This is something you can take to raise money or to potentially close LOIs, pre-sales, etc. Week 2, We're going to go into design. On your own, you would take that list of features to designers. They would define their features based on benchmark competitors, how they wanted it to look and feel, and they'd create a sexy design, and you would hope to God that your devs can actually build it. We're going to enter a 1-week product workshop. Depending on if this is your first week, if we skipped week 1 because you already have the offer, it's 1 to 2 days of intensive sessions. If we have to do the interviews, we'll do them this week. If we already did them the previous, we can skip ahead. In this, we're going to be defining our product story. So last week we did the offer story. Now we're focusing on the product story. And this is describing how our customers are going to be introduced to and receive the value from our product. So before it was how they're introduced to the product and they acquire it. Now we're actually getting into how do they actually use that product to receive the value. We're going to build out wire flows, laying out all the paths your customer can take, every little step, every little direction. And we're going to build a clickable wireframe prototype, unstyled, reviewed by our tech team for feasibility so that you know exactly what we're going to build, exactly what is going to be in it. We return to the map, and whereas in week 1, the map really focused on the existing story and how we fit into it, the existing process the customer follows, the existing place where they're feeling pain. This is our map. This is the map of our product. They have downloaded it. They've signed up for an account. They're on our website over here on the left. And then over here on the right, we have arrived at this value delivery. Much more focused than the supply chain map, you'll notice. This one is Hayway's, maps to the previous one we showed. Over here, we've got Blueverse. You can see here, too, Hayway is a utility. So it has to deliver a lot of successive actions, right? Blueverse is more of a social network. So there's a lot of different places you can go in the app and accomplish things. So you can actually kind of start to feel out the product as well, the way that it's actually going to flow and be used when you get this map process. Offline, our team is going to convert this high-level process that we do together into detailed wire flows. This is nitty-gritty. Again, this is basically this bottom left corner of the Hayway map, the little red square, turned into everything that can happen in that little red corner. We've got the success moments over here on the right in the circles, the initial use states over on the left, and we flow from left to right. Once we have the wire flows done, we're going to map them out into the first visual representation of our product, wire frames. These start off static, and then we turn them into an actual prototype. To show you an example of what that looks like, this is an actual prototype. This is a wireframe prototype for Blueverse. If you open this on a mobile phone, it actually looks and feels just like an app. It's just design, though. There's no code involved in this. It's just images that we've strung together in a kind of a fancy PowerPoint presentation, to be honest. But what it does is it shows you the flow of the app. It shows you where each one of these functionalities and features lives. It shows you how we get from one place to the other. It shows you what happens when we do things and the kind of the end states for them. We build these out. We hook them all up. And these are the blueprint now for what the developers are going to go build. We avoid styling in this week. We want to understand functionality before we understand form. Oops. We can do these on the web as well. This one over here on the left also is a wireframe prototype. And that is the end work product for week 2. Week 3, planning. We're going to plan for launch. Now, on your own, you would take your spec to developers with your designs that you've done, and they would come up with a ballpark timeline. Devs would plan the project around what's easiest to deliver first, and they would deliver an estimate with no guarantee. What we're going to do is a 1-week road mapping workshop. And again, 1 and 2 days of intensive sessions. 2, if we've skipped offer and design, if you guys already have all that done. We're going to do a full product backlog, including every use story involved in the product. And this is, again, where we get into the nitty gritty. For a 8-week development timeline, we're talking like 100 stories typically. We're going to list those out in Jira or Trello, wherever you want to manage your project. If you're intending to do development with us, we tend to use Jira. If you have an existing software you use, we'll move to you. And then we're going to do a full design for getting your product to launch. So we're going to take that wireframe prototype, we're going to skin it, we're going to style it, it's going to look good, it's going to be literally pixel for pixel what your app or website will look like when it's done. We're going to pull in our tech leads, we're going to do a technical analysis document. So if we need to integrate with any existing APIs, if we need to use Twilio to send text messages, we got to use Instagram to pull photos. We're going to make sure that we can get the access we need from those APIs and that we can do that in a cost-effective way. And then we're going to put all of this together into a week-by-week timeline for when we believe things can be launched. As we move forward, we're going to spread those windows out. So we'll say what we are sure can be done in 4 weeks, what we think can be done in 8 to 10 weeks, what we think can be done in 12 to 16 weeks. As we get further out, those will split up, but we will give you a guaranteed cost quote on any range that we estimate. So if we say this is going to take between 6 and 9 months and it takes 12, we eat those extra 3 months. That's our guarantee. This week is all about the design. So we take the wireframe prototype, we go back into it, we reskin it like this. We add styling directives for the developers. So CSS directives for colors, the images, the height, their centering, interactions for how we're going to transition from one screen to another. This turns into an actual prototype, which we'll get to at the end. We do a bunch of research. So if that means that we've got someone building out a data model on the right, this was for a very complex medical client. We had this insane relationship between exercises, videos of the exercises, voiceovers, captioning, positioning. Is really crazy data model. We wanted to build it out before we got started. Over here on the left, this is actually something I built for Loper to test the matching algorithm. It's code inside of a Google spreadsheet. It's a trick I learned back at my Google days. This allowed Eric to basically get in while we were still building the app, test out the algorithm, and make sure that the matches we were getting matched what he expected. So we'll do things like this 3rd week, build proofs of concept, that kind of thing. Once we have those user stories in Jira, we'll use that to build a timeline. So here you can kind of see the high-level feature sets matching suggested matches school details, as well as the individual tickets. This screenshot I took after we'd started dev, so the statuses are some are in progress and whatnot. And then I will put together an estimate document for you. And this is a spreadsheet that I share so you can check my math. I don't trust my own math, so please check it. You'll see here we've got our guaranteed chunk for that MVP. That's guaranteed. It cannot get higher. As we go out into the future, we give low and high estimates. These are also guaranteed though. So even on the high estimate, if we go over it, that's our fault, not your fault. As we get out further, those windows grow. Alternatively, we can pause after 6 weeks and reset and say, okay, cool, we did this. Now let's get another guaranteed estimate for the next 6 weeks. We put this all together into a roadmap, and we used to use Confluence for these, so this is a screenshot of Confluence. We moved to Notion so that you guys can actually interact with them a bit more. Confluence is great, but those Atlassian products are really heavy. We're going to put together the board, the initiative, the product documents that we write up, any of the tech documents that we put together, the cost workbook, the wire flows, the designs. We're going to link into things in the document. You'll have everything you need to make an educated decision on whether you want to move forward with development. You can also take this roadmap, this proposal, to other companies who are giving you proposals and have them review it, have them compare it to their own work. It's everything you need to start development Monday morning. So what does this look like when we put it all together? Well, we call this the 3-week kickoff sprint. We're going to focus week 1 on the offer. We're going to start with that 2-day intensive workshop, build out the offer story map as part of that workshop. That's the story of the user and the transformation they'll receive with our product. We're going to build out a landing page. We're going to have our designers make this thing look good. We're going to build out a sales prototype, a Wild West or Wizard of Oz version of the product that we can take to customers and actually start selling with. Week 2, we're going to switch gears from this kind of high-level offer conversation, starting to get into the nitty-gritty, the what of the product. We're going to do another intensive workshop where we build out this product story map. Our team is offline going to build these wire flows, all the different states that can happen inside of our application or our website. And then we're going to end the week with a clickable wireframe prototype, a blueprint of your software, of your product, that we can touch and feel and have it work just like the product, but not be styled or not actually be functioning. Week 3 then is the nitty gritty. Now we're getting into the how and the when. We are going to go back into an intensive workshop. We're going to talk about styling there. We're going to use that workshop to build out our product backlog, all of the individual tasks the developers have to achieve in order to launch this. We're going to do a full reskinning of that wireframe prototype, designing it out, ready for development. We're going to have our tech team put together a tech report. So again, looking at APIs or dependencies, anything that we need to answer ahead of time so that we're not surprised later on. And then we're going to put that all together into a week-by-week timeline and give you a guaranteed price quote. Now, before I move on, I want to stress, week 1 and week 2 are things you can do entirely yourself. The workshop is based on Google Ventures Design Sprint. You can buy the Sprint book and run those yourself. You can build the story maps on paper or in a drag and drop tool like Miro, Lucidchart. Landing page builders there's a ton of them. Prototyping you can do in Balsamiq. You can do in PowerPoint. You can put together a sales prototype. These are things you can do yourself. I would love for you to come do them with us. But if you want to save some money, you are confident in your ability to execute, you can do weeks 1 and 2 yourself. Week 3 is where you have to get technical professionals involved. We're talking about how, we're talking about when. We need experts. If you were going to go with existing partners on any one of these weeks, week 1, that offer week, Design Sprint Ltd, AJ and Smart, fantastic providers. That's all they do basically is this week 1, the design sprint. They're going to charge $20,000 for that week, and I've contacted them about this. This is their pricing that they've given me. Week 2, let's say you want to bring in a really stellar firm like Horizon. Again, love their work. They were saying 5 to 8 weeks is their average project. We're going to give them 2 to accomplish what we're going to accomplish in 1. They said $8,000 a week is their fee, so we're going to say that that's a value of $16,000 if you went with them. And finally, that road mapping piece. This one's hard to value because it's hard to say exactly what would be involved from a resource perspective for most people. For us, we pull in our design team, our development team. We have a tech lead involved, and we've got myself involved. Anywhere else, just that amount of time of designers and developers is going to cost at least $10,000. The total value of the 3 weeks, if you did that all again with existing providers, $46,000. We're going to charge you $8,000 a week. $8,000 for the offer, $8,000 for the product, $8,000 for the roadmap. Now, if you want to do all of these together, I'm going to lop $4,000 off of that. So $20,000 for the 3 weeks. Likewise, if you want to do 2 of the 3 weeks, instead of it being $16,000, we charge $14,000. Separately, they're still $8,000. So that sounds good to you. If you're excited about kickstarting development on your project in the next 3 weeks, maybe 2 if you've already made some progress, you want to get started, the best way to do that is to book a call with me today. Go to nonerds.com. There's a calendar link there. You can also chat with me on the site. We've got a little Telegram or I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, there's a chat bubble there. You can click it. You can go directly to my Calendly page, calendly.com/nonerds/explore. You can email me at james@nonerds.com. However, it's easiest for you to contact me. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat. Even if you're not interested in starting this process, you have questions about it, you want to do it yourself, book a call. I'm always happy to chat. Always happy to give second opinions. I love this work, so please reach out to me. Why do I stress about going right now and booking a call? If you want to get started soon, we're small, we're growing, but we're a small team. We only really have capacity for 2 sprints a month. They are intense, both in terms of time and honestly in terms of energy, especially those workshops. I ran 3 of these in 1 week once, and I was like a zombie afterwards. They're super fun. They're super intense. We just can't run more than 2 of these a month right now with all the existing obligations we have. So currently have about a 4-week wait list, depending on when you contact me. Maybe that'll be shorter, maybe that'll be longer. But if you are interested in getting started soon, I really cannot stress. Go on, book a call today. If you're still not sure that it's worth it, a couple things that I want to add on. Mention that you watch this video. Mention that you put up with my voice and my face for 2 hours, and let me know that you're interested in starting. We will add in the branding workshop and the design system, each something that we charge $5,000 for on top. Now, the branding workshop is basically your logo, your style, your colors, everything that you need for branded documents. So business cards, presentations, contracts, that sort of thing. From there, we'll build on those and provide you with a design system. Now, this is a little bit more technical of a document. It's going to specify the fonts that you should use, their typefaces, bold versus regular versus light versus slim, I think is another one. The weights, the point weights. What is a title? What's a header? What's a subtitle? What fonts do those use? We're also going to design out visual components that we can use in the actual app itself or website. Buttons, sliders, that kind of thing. Keeping these things on brand and in style. This is everything that you need to build a product or a website. So one of the things that's always surprising in some of these projects for non-technical founders is how many different actual products you end up having at the end. You might have a e-commerce site that helps hook into a admin dashboard that you give your B2B customers access to, and you've got a consumer-facing app. Having a design system in place lets you roll those additional products out a lot quicker. Oops. This is from Blue Versus branding workshop. You can see the variations on logos that we did, some visual elements that tied into those. What we're trying to do here is show options, show ideas so that you can make a decision. And then here's a design system. This one was for Sora. We've got colors here. We've got their hex values. We've got the sizing on the buttons, the margins, the different states, whether they're active or pressed. And we've got typography. We go into this level of detail on these. And again, they're super useful for building out new products quickly. The designers have the building blocks defined for them. They just kind of got to put them together in a layout that makes sense. Carolina, our UX lead, wraps these up into what she calls the handbook. This is a living document that anytime we add new components, new things to the design team is going to update your handbook. They're really great to have. Love this. Love that she produces these. So again, that's the branding workshop, $5,000 value. The design system, another $5,000 value. Totally added on top. We normally charge for those. If you mention this video, I will take them off. Now, maybe the most important part of this entire conversation, if you are not happy with the work that we do in the sprint, I will refund 100% of your fees, no questions asked. That's not entirely true. I am going to ask you questions. I'm going to want to know what we did wrong, how we can improve. You don't have to answer them if you don't want. I'll still give you your money back. But no matter what, if you're not happy, we will refund 100% of our fees. That is how confident I am in this process and in our ability to execute it. So to wrap all of that up one last time, week 1 offer, week 2 product, week 3 roadmap. Those are billed out at $8,000 each, a considerable drop from the value or cost if you went with someone else. On top of that, we're going to add the branding workshop and the design system, another $10,000 of value. Total, that would be $56,000 anywhere else. I am going to cut that price down to $20,000 if you book them together. If you want to do 2 weeks, contact me. If there's a version of this that you want to do that we pull certain things out, reach out and we'll talk about it. I'm always happy to be flexible and find something that works for you. And on top of all of that, it's 100% guaranteed. Nothing that we charge is lost if you decide that you don't like what we're doing and you want to pull out. So that's it. If you're interested in kickstarting development on your product, please reach out to me. Book a call, nonerds.com, james@nonerds.com. I love doing these. The sprints, again, are my bread and butter. They're so much fun. Please reach out. Any questions you have about the process, about any of this, reach out to me. Let's chat. And that's it. I'm super excited. Looking forward to kicking off your product's development. Before we go, a couple of FAQ, frequently asked questions that I get all the time. First one is, what if I already know exactly what I want to build? That's great. I'm really glad that you know exactly what you want to build. I have no idea what you want to build. And any developer that you partner with, even if that's a co-founder that you're bringing in, isn't going to know exactly what you want to build. Even if you're running this process as entirely internal, it's you and your co-founders, it's super valuable. The amount of internal misconceptions that we uncover in this process, the number of things where the CEO thinks that they're going to go one way and the CTO thinks they're going another way. It's something that they talked about 3 months ago. They never actually closed that argument. This process helps pull everyone out of the dark, lay everything on the table. So even if you already know exactly what you want to build, I don't, your partners may not, we need to get that out of your brain, onto paper, so we can all move forward. Why should I pay extra money up front? This seems like a lot on top of paying developers to build my product. You're right. It is quite a bit of work that is involved in prepping for development. And pulling this out of the development process seems like it's extra cost. But all of this work is work that has to get done at some point in this process, no matter what. So even though it feels extra, what you're really doing is you're taking all of this cost that's buried in projects, typically buried in these proposals in ways that isn't immediately obvious, and we're doing it up front. We're making it crystal clear how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost. We have deadlines on it, and then we move into development, and we don't hide these costs in that development process. What if I already have an MVP, designs, a prototype, a proof of concept, a landing page, whatever it is? Come talk to me. The whole point of this process is that it's flexible. So if you are already 90% of the way towards launch, you just need help with this one little thing, we can talk about a 1-week version of the sprint where we figure out what that one little thing is and try to execute as quickly as possible. That doesn't necessarily have to be at the full price. We are flexible on this. So please come to me. The prices on the previous page are really meant to be kind of a guideline. If you come to me and have something custom that you want to do, let's talk. I'm extremely busy and cannot set aside all this time. Is there a version of the process that would work for me? This is a big one, and I've been asked this a lot by people who are starting businesses outside of their existing business, especially people who have existing businesses they run. Sachin Gulaya of Alpine Vapors, founder of Replenish. Alpine Vapors is a marijuana derivatives company. The production is extremely time consuming, and they are always getting, he said, they're always getting audited. Basically, you never know, any day of the week, an auditor might show up because of the nature of the business. And he basically said, I cannot set aside 2 days, basically half a day, 2 days in a row to do this. It'll kill my other business. So what we did with him is we took that 3 weeks, and I think it ended up being closer to 5, maybe even 6 when it was all said and done. We did a lot of the customer interviews offline. He was not there. We recorded them, we summarized them, sent him those summaries. Again, the whole point of this is that it's flexible. So if you come to me and say, hey, I love this, I can't wait to do it, I don't have this time, I can't set this time aside, I want to do it quicker, I want to do it, I want to spend more time on it so that I can do it week to week, come to me, talk to me, we'll figure it out. And that's it. I'm James Knight, founder and chief nerd at No Nerds, No Problem. Thank you for putting up with me for the length of this video. If you have any questions about anything I said, james@nonerds.com. I will look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks and have a great day.